Birth Order and Boys: How Siblings Shape Personality and Family Dynamics. If you grew up with a brother or sister and now find yourself raising children of your own, you may have already noticed how birth order seems to impact personalities within a family. Kids growing up in the same home can be very different. Some naturally take charge, others are more easygoing, and some seem determined to carve out their own unique path. My guest today is Dr. Robert Hurst, who spent more than 50 years as an orthodontist, observing thousands of children and teens. Through those years of working closely with families, he began noticing patterns that traditional birth order theory didn't fully explain. His research led him to write a book, Life's Fingerprints: How Birth Order Affects Your Path Throughout Life. Dr. Hurst, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Susie. I'm glad to be here and try to answer all your questions about birth order.
And would you like me to call you Dr. Hurst? Robert Hurst? What would you like?
Well, you can call me Dr. Bob. Many of my patients call me that, so let's keep it more informal.
Great. So the first thing I want to say is your book, and for those who are on YouTube, I'm showing it to you. It is really beautiful, and I enjoyed looking through it. What motivated you to write it?
Well, for many years I was using the theory of birth order in my practice, and I had a patient who was a pediatrician, and I was actually treating him and his children. And he told me, he said, "You have to share your ideas with everybody." He says, "You need to write a book." And I said, "I'm really not an author." He says, "Well, you better be, because this information needs to get out." He says, "I'm using it in my practice, and it has just changed the way I look at all my patients." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write the book." And 3 years later, I finished the book. And I have to say, and I'm going to hold this up, I read your book, and I thought it was a wonderful story of a mother raising two sons, and from birth up until their 20s, and all the tricks you did during during the time you raised them. I thought it was a great book, and I suggest that to everybody too.
Well, I appreciate that, and I guess we're both want to share, right? Isn't that really our knowledge and experience? And so, I
That's true. That's true.
so many parents have heard of birth order, and that it can shape personality. For listeners who might not be familiar with the idea, what exactly is birth order theory?
Well, it started back, if everyone remembers the stories about Freud and how Freud thought that the children really, it was based a lot on their relationship with their parents. And at that time, in his little local society, he had another fella in there by the name of Alfred Adler. And Adler said, I don't think the parents had that much to do with it. I think the brothers and sisters are the reason that the different siblings are so different. It's really their interrelationships with their siblings. And now Alfred Adler was a number 2 boy, and Freud was the oldest in his father's second family. And after that little discussion, they never spoke again. And that was the starting of birth order theory with Alfred Adler, who came to the United States in the 30s and pursued that whole concept. So he said, it's your relationship with your siblings that make you who you are. So that's how it all started.
I am the oldest of 2, and I have a younger brother that I found a lot of what you referred to in the book very relevant to me, and also my 2 boys that in the book I call Earnest and Exuberance, which is almost a synonym.
Right. I thought that was great.
So, what is the traditional birth order patterns? Firstborn, middle child, youngest, oldest, and are there ways to make the most out of, that your fate or your child's fate if they're where they fall into that?
Right. Well, the book's title is, Life's Fingerprint, how your path goes throughout life. You carry your birth order throughout life. That doesn't change. And it's like the uh, unseen radio wave that is running behind your life, your entire life, helping you make decisions and influencing all your decisions. And you may not be aware of it. But if you understand birth order and you understand who you are, you can use those forces to the betterment of your life. Now, let's start with the first child that's born. That's an only child. That child is very different. It doesn't relate to any other children. They relate to the parents.
Mhm.
So every firstborn child starts their life as an only.
Hmm.
And of course, an only child is perfect in every way. And that was you, at least until your brother was born. So what happens is the only child has a lot of self-confidence because their people that they relate to are parents, another generation older than them. So they're like little adults.
Mhm.
And they can be, well, every birth order has two sides to them. They could be very spoiled as an only child, or they can be little adult-like and very reliable and dependable. So the only child's birth order really has a different flavor. All only children have different flavors. It's the flavor of their parents' combined birth orders.
Hmm.
So an only child, if he's raised by a number one and a number two, he has the qualities of ones and twos within his only child. If he's raised by a number three, he'd have the qualities of a number three related to his only child. It gets a little complicated, but
Mhm.
if you start to put the numbers together, it starts to work. But anyway, when number one, the only child, becomes a number one only when the next child is born.
Mhm.
So what happens to number one? Well, number one's not very happy about this at all because now she has to share. And number one is going to say, I want to keep this position, my throne. So I am going to be perfect. So number ones are very high achievers and they don't ever expect to make mistakes. They're not expected to make a mistake and they're very hard on themselves.
Mhm.
That would be you. You want to be perfect and you want everything to be, and you are so hard on yourself, you don't allow yourself to make mistakes. You think that's really bad for your ego if you ever make a mistake. Number two is a little different. Number two comes into this world and they want to be just the opposite of number one because number one's got a spot in the family. And number two says, well, you know, the only thing I want is don't tell me what to do. Number one says, I'm in charge. And number one wants to tell number two what to do. And number two says, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Don't tell me what to do. So they want to control their own space. And they want to be different from number one. Number one has got a head start in school. So number one is really the good student. So number two says, well, what do I have a spot? Oh, I'll be an athlete. So I'll be the good athlete in the family. I'll be different. I'll be special that way because everybody in the family wants to be different and special. And so they have a more outgoing personality. They can be very competitive. People say, number two is stubborn. Number two is not stubborn. He just doesn't want to be told what to do.
Mhm.
So there they are. That's the sibling rivalry that goes on. And we're going to probably talk about that later. Two girls, two boys, a boy and a girl and a boy. And they're all kind of unique, but that's what goes on in every family.
Mhm.
And the sibling rivalry is something you really got to work on. But then number three comes along. Well, number three is this starts to be, well, that becomes the baby in the family, but it's really not the baby, as you'll see in a minute. But the number three has to understand 17 different types of interrelationships within the family. The mother, the father, the firstborn, the secondborn to the firstborn. They are masters at understanding people.
Hmm.
They can be very sensitive, very quiet. They don't want to let the older siblings know that they're hurting them when they beat them up, because they know they'll just get more of the same. So they suffer in silence, but they're educated by the older siblings. I always want to say, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. That's the number 3, because they're so sensitive, but they won't let you know that they're sensitive. But they're artistic, creative. They're sweet. They're intuitive. They like the outdoors. They want to save the world. They see life so differently than 1 and 2. They really do. And actually, they love to play 1 and 2 against each other, because they're so good at relationships. They know exactly what buttons to push. Then the next kid that comes along is the true baby in the family. That's number 4. Number 4 really is raised by the older kids, because now you divided up the mother and father's attention over 4 kids. They don't have any time for the baby. Now, the baby can be really loud. Why? Because no one listens to the baby. So they have to be loud, and they hit on the other kids. And, in my practice, when I have a number 4, the number 4, I never see the parents. They're usually brought in by older siblings. And when number 4 leaves the office, they usually drop their appointment card in the driveway somewhere. So they're not very responsible, because older siblings are always taking care of them.
Right.
Okay. So then, now if you want to go a little further with birth order theory, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then starts over again with number 5. Number 5 is like a number 1. And I use the analogy primary colors and secondary colors. A 5 is like a 1, as a primary color is to a secondary color. It's just like a 1, except that it's more subtle. It's a little smoother. It's not feeling so much tension as a number 1 does, but they still have those same qualities. The number 6 is like a number 2. And a number 7 is like a number 3, but it's not quite the same. It's it's a little more subtle.
Right.
Okay.
I became very interested in this because my husband is 7th of 9, and his
Okay.
parents had 9 kids in 12 years, and there are 3 years between the last 2. And so when I joined the family and they would talk about the first family, actually, it was only the older kids that talked like this, but they would describe the first family and the second family. And then the number 9, they called the only child. And so only having a brother and marrying into this, I really, it took a while for me to wrap my head around it, but I appreciate and understand what you're talking about.
Yes, number 9 is another type of number 1, but it's a 3rd level number 1. Number 1, number 5, and number 9. And I can see, it's interesting. People figured it out without knowing anything about birth order. Every 4 kids was another family.
Right.
See, they said the first family, that was the first 4 kids. The next 4 kids were another family. And then the next family started, but they only had 1 kid in it.
Right. And
The number 9.
they called him the only child because he had the most time with
Yes.
his parents, right? Because of the
Well-
the quick order of kids. But
Right, and the rest of them are off at school.
right. Exactly.
And so you're right. So, most people understand birth order as they get older in life, and they can look back at things and see how people were. When you're very young and you're in your 20s, and so they don't quite understand the birth order thing because it's too close to them, and they haven't been around life long enough to see how people turn out. But everyone seems to find their right spot eventually in with their birth order.
Right. So how does gender, play into this? And what's the difference between like 2 brothers compared to 2 sisters or a sister and a brother?
Sure. Yeah, they're all unique. Let's start with 2 sisters. When they're close in age, in other words, at least within 4 years of each other, 2, 3 years, the older sister dominates that younger sister. And the younger sister kind of looks up to the older sister for some support and whatever. And the young older sister loves that because she wants to tell younger sister what to do. But younger sister, remember, she's a 2, and she really doesn't want to be told what to do. What I've found is this relationship stays that way until number 2 graduates from high school. Then she blossoms into a whole different person, the real person that she wanted to be, because number 1 sister is no longer got her thumb on her. But number 1 sister doesn't want her. Number 1 sister is going to be the valedictorian at school, but number 2 sister might be on the cheerleading team, or she's going to be the athlete. Unless number 1 sister slips in school, then number 2 dethrones number 1 sister and becomes the student, and number 1 sister becomes the athlete. That's how you can tell if there's been a dethroning in a relationship. Now let's go to 2 boys. 2 boys are a little different. Why? Well, there's a lot of testosterone going on here.
Well, tell me about it.
The girls don't have. Yeah. So, and mother of boys, I don't have to tell you anything about this. So they're going to kill each other. If they could. Of course, you go back to the Bible with Cain and Abel, and that didn't work out so well. But number 2 wants to dethrone number 1. And so there you have to look at that very carefully about school and athletics. Who is going to be the student? Number 2 wants to knock him off if he can. Who's going to be the athlete? And what I tell people is that whatever you do with your children, especially with 2 boys, don't let them play the same sport, because then you really increase the competitiveness between them. Let one of them play baseball, let one of them play basketball. Just make them special, because every kid wants to be special in their own right. So, try to keep the competition down, especially between 2 boys. Now, what happens when there's a girl and her younger brother? Well, we have to look at society, right? This is you.
This is me.
And society says, is this a male-oriented society, or is this a female-oriented society? So in a male-oriented society, such as, well, it could be Asian families are very male-oriented. They don't even count the girls in a birth order. When I talk to them about birth order, they always say we have 6 kids, and they're all mentioning the boys. I said, were there any girls in the family? Oh, yes, they were girls. Well, where were they? Well, we don't really count them. So in an Asian family, the boy, if he's number 2, he immediately dethrones the number 1 girl, and he doesn't do anything. He's just a boy. But in our society, it's kind of 50-50 now. So the boy doesn't have as much of an edge as he used to. And so he's going to compete against his older sister. Now, how did that work out in your family? I could see you kept your spot. You were the student.
Well, yeah. My brother was the athlete, All-American lacrosse player. And I
There
would
you
say
go.
he toughened me up because he pushed me physically and was probably always snapping at my heels. But
Absolutely, because he wanted to dethrone you. You just didn't give him the chance. You held your own.
I did learn how to throw a punch.
Good. Now, the other example is a boy first and then the girl. This is a wonderful relationship because the boy is going to protect his younger sister. And she doesn't see so much about dethroning him because she's special as the first girl in the family. He doesn't worry about dethroning because he's the older boy. Jimmy Stewart is an example of that. Just in life, he was the nicest guy, but he was the oldest one. He had a younger sister.
Right.
He talked about her too. But there's your example. If there could be the nicest example of birth order and how they get together, the older boy and then the number 2 girl. And he's always looking out for his younger sister, and she's always looking up to her older brother. So that works out pretty good, unless older brother slips. And then number 2 girl is going to take that spot. And number 1 boy never recovers after that.
Right.
Once you're dethroned, it's tough. So I hope that answered the question. A lot of your viewers or have that situation, boy, girl, boy, and all that.
Right. And I appreciate in your book, throughout your book, you use people like you just used Jimmy Stewart as an example. You use famous people to help illustrate the personalities, which is really helpful.
I try to give examples of everything.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
That was hard. A lot of research went into that.
I'm quite certain. So also in your book, you describe something called double birth order, and could you explain that specifically?
Oh, this is what makes my book unique from any other book on birth order. You see, when I started in my orthodontic practice, I understood I had to understand my kids, my patients, to get their cooperation, especially, with brushing their teeth and taking care of their braces and things. And I had to find a tool that I could quickly figure out how to get to each of these kids. And so I started using birth order. It didn't work. Well, it did work a third of the time. I could get these kids understand, and two-thirds of the time it didn't work, and I was ready just to give it up. And then I went to all my records and I started looking at all the families and all the kids and all the ages. And I realized two-thirds of all my patients were separated from brothers and sisters by at least 4 years.
Mm.
And I said, my God, something's going on here. What's different about this? And then I realized they ended up getting a double birth order because they were at home while the older sibling was at school. So they were raised like an only child. So you added all the characteristics of that only child, being self-assured, being able to talk with adults, and you add that to the characteristics of their birth order. If a number 2 didn't want to be told what to do, a 2 only would be an immovable object. This is a strong, strong, strong person, And that's what happened. When these kids were separated, they added that only child birth order to their ordinal number, and it became 10 times the characteristics of that number. If the 3 was sensitive and whatever, a 3 only, well, they understand people really well. They become very dramatic. And, it's like, I'm not shy at all. Number 3 is shy and retiring. Number 3 only is, look at me, I am here.
Right.
And, like Meghan Merkel is a 3 only.
Mhm.
She, as we know in her life, she doesn't make a whole lot of friends,
Mhm.
but she sure makes a splash when she's around. She
So
hasn't made friends with the royals.
right. This is true. So I would sort of imagine that would play out the same way if there was a second family involved. So let's say there were, two kids, that sort of traditional 1 and 2, and then, a split of a couple of years, 4 years maybe, and then another child. Would
Y-
does that work the
y-
same way if it's a
Yes, yes. You are right on it. That's the other type of double birth order. Because the first one we said that added the only child, but what if we have 2 families with a spot in between of at least 4 years?
Mhm.
An example of that would be, we'll go back to the royals, Princess Di. She had 2 older sisters. Then there was a 4-year gap and she was born, so she was number 3. Then 2 years later, her younger brother was born. This gave her 2 birth orders. She was the oldest one in the second family, and she was the third born. So she was a 3-1 birth order. Well, with these people, they have 2 different personalities. Sometimes they're a 3, sometimes they're a 1. Now, I'll give you a perfect example of that. We don't want to get into politics, but we have a president that's got a double birth order. He's a 4, which is the baby in the family. The baby in the family says whatever he wants to say. And he's also a 1. He's presidential. He's in charge. He's like a number 1. And that's why he's a great negotiator, because no one knows what he's going to be. Is he going to be 1 or is he going to be the 4? So that's when he wrote the book, Art of a Deal. He doesn't know why he's so good at it, but that's why, because they don't know who they're dealing with. So the double birth order with the two numbers is a very different kind of person. Like his younger brother would be a 4 and a 2. So he's the baby, but he's also a 2, which says, don't tell me what to do. So, if you understand people's birth orders, all of a sudden you know who you're dealing with. And sometimes it's difficult.
Mm-hmm. So, for families with, you know, multiple kids, what would you say is the most helpful thing that parents should keep in mind when they're, managing their family's dynamics?
Well, the most important thing to understand is that every child wants to be different, and every child is special in some sort of way. And don't try to make all the kids the same. I see that in my practice all the time. The first child, they're very obedient and they follow all the rules and they do everything great. And then the next child's a little different, whatever. And the parent says, why can't you be like Susie, who did everything right? And you say, wait a minute. They don't want to be like Susie and they want to be their own selves. And so treat every child as unique and don't try to make them all fit the same mold. And then you're going to have a wonderful, happy family. Everybody in the family has a role to play. So you don't want them playing the same role. And that's what happens when you have blended families, when you have kids from both families come together. All the kids that go up in birth order by age adapt wonderfully. All the kids that are demoted in birth order because of the marriage, the new 2 marriages, they have trouble in that marriage, in the new family.
Right.
So if you get demoted, you don't like that.
I no doubt. I am quite certain. So Dr. Bob, how does it work with twins and where they are in the family?
Well, twins take a lot of energy from the family, and most twins will tell you who is the older twin and who is the younger twin, and they will take those birth order positions. I had a set of twins in my practice where the parents did not tell them who was the older twin, and they were very confused. And they had problems all through their life about who they were. And one day they would be somebody else. And they really had some psychiatric problems because everybody wants to be somebody. And when you're not told who you are, you don't know who you are. But the twins will take the spot of the older and the younger. And wherever they are in the birth order chain, if you have 2 siblings ahead of them, then the twins will be number 3 and number 4. And they will express those same characteristics as a number 3 and a number 4 would in regular birth order. But I would make this statement. If you have twins, make sure they each know who is older and who is younger. Don't keep that secret from them.
Hmm. That is so interesting. Thank you. So for moms, especially raising boys, what advice would you give them?
Well, just keep in the back of your mind Cain and Abel. And when you keep thinking that, you say, well, I don't want to let uh, the competitiveness between my 2 boys get so strong that they're going to really hate each other. You want to make them special in their own ways. As you did, earnest and exuberance. I mean, you did a wonderful job as a mother. I mean, you treated those boys, it was like you read the birth order book because you treated them separate. You treated them as they were different and you understood that, they were competitive with each other, but yet they ended up liking each other at the very end. So treat them special, but understand what they're trying to do in the birth order realm, trying to unseat each other, but make them special so they keep their spots.
Mm-hmm. I that's
So
that's great. That's great advice.
that's what you did.
Well, I
But
I
the
think
advice is in your book too.
well, there are some things that I did that I just did for necessity, like keeping things equal. Like there is an equality, I think, that parents get hung up in. If I give one child this, I must give the other child that. And I let go of that really early in my parenting journey as unrealistic, and I just tried to give each child what I thought they needed.
Yeah. What number one wants is not what number two wants. So if you give them equally, number two says, I didn't want that anyway. So it doesn't, the equal thing doesn't work out. You have to use what's unique for each child, that's special for them, and then it'll work. And you did it, and you were successful. So I thought that was great.
Well, thank you. I use a lot of humor in my book, so it's not the research
Yes, you
based.
did.
It's not the research based book that you did. So, at is there anything else you would want to explain before we sort of wrap up this podcast that you don't think we've touched on?
Yes. Um, Most of the birth order books that are out there, they try to make it simple. And I realized early that it wasn't simple. It's not just an only, and they say 1, 2, 3, but it's not 1, 2, 3. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. But then when you add the double birth orders, it's a 1 only, a 2 only, a 3 only, a 4 only. And then if you add the other ones, you could have a 2, 1, a 3, 1, a 3, 2. There's probably about 17 different birth orders. So if someone says, birth order, that's hooey, that doesn't work, it's because they haven't given it a full look. And most of these books that are out there, they try to make it look too simple. And it isn't simple. And then they're going to say it doesn't work at all. But it works, and it works beautifully once you understand the whole thing. So I would say, get my book. And not only do we have the book, as you showed, in hardcover with cover, we also have it as a USB. On our website, you can get, if I can hold it up enough, you can go and get Life's Fingerprint. Let's see if we can get it up there.
A little bit higher.
Right there. There we go. There we go. And you just plug that little thing into your computer. But I really suggest get the color copy that get off the website, because it's a coffee table book, and everybody comes for Thanksgiving dinner is going to want to look up their birth order. And it's great conversation. And, you won't have any fights at Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, I appreciated
Hopefully
all
not.
of the charts and illustrations, and I'm a visual person, and so that really, helped me understand what you're getting at with the way you were breaking it down, and then adding on the social part of it with people that we know, famous people. So
Right. Yeah. Hopefully. That's good. Thank you.
So at the end of every program, I ask our guests to give moms sort of a quote or a thought or a guiding phrase or something that they can say to themselves as they're trying to figure out, the multiple children scenario with birth order. What would you say to maybe the parents of your patients during those moments?
Well, this is easy, because also you'll find on our website we have T-shirts, and so I would say if you have an only child, keep in mind that Superman was an only child. That's what we have on the T-shirt. If you have a number one, the T-shirt says, "I want to be in charge." So think about your child always want to be in charge. Number two says, "Don't tell me what to do." Okay. The number three would say, "I feel your pain." How sensitive they are. And number four, if you have a number four, says, "I don't want to grow up." So, that's the baby. So if you use those common words, then you see your child in that light, then you can make everything special for that child, and it won't drive you crazy, which it could.
Well, and that too will pass, right?
Yes, it will. They will grow up.
So yeah, even Peter Pan, number 4. So
Oh, can I ask you a question?
sure.
Um, in your husband's family, was the oldest and the fifth a girl?
Um, let's see. I'm gonna have to go backwards so it's Mary Ellen Jane,
Okay.
Bob, Kath, Carl. Carl is so Mary Ellen's a girl. Carl's
Number one was a girl?
yeah, number 1's a girl. Number 5
Yes.
is a boy. And then
Number 9?
Number 9 is a boy. So there were 5 girls and 4 boys.
Okay, well, your husband's a number 7.
He's number 7. He's the third of the 4 boys.
Right, which makes him a 3. But he had, the oldest sister was a girl, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's you. He understands you better than you understand him because you didn't have a number 3 or 7, a 3 boy in your family. So he sees you as he saw his oldest sister, and he understands that position. So he has a leg up on understanding you, but you don't quite understand him like he understands you.
I'll give you that.
Think
I
about
would
that.
say that's true.
But if you match your childhood birth order, it's a type of love at first sight, because when he saw you, he understood you right away. And for him, it was very, very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that was love at first sight. You're not going to get rid of him.
No.
He's there forever.
I know it. We're both in it for the long haul. And
That's right. That's right.
Well, Dr. Bob, I really appreciate your discussion about this and also the marital advice. And I want to tell our listeners that I will have links to Dr. Bob's book and the materials on his website and to his website on the mothersofboys.life website in the show notes. So please check them out and thank you for joining. If this episode meant something to you, please follow and share the Mothers of Boys Survival Guide podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Sharing helps other moms discover the show. Be kind to yourself, moms.